Hi, everybody. This is the week before Memorial Day. I hope you'll all be enjoying yourselves. I hope you will have maskless barbecues. I hope you will travel. I hope you will live life. Of course, I have hoped that for about a year. And some of you have. I have. When I think of what was done to kids with no schools, and that schools get away with it, I'll have a lot to say about schools in the course of the show today. Anyway, I welcome you, and as always, I hope you had a good weekend. Certainly, if traffic is any indication, more people have had a weekend. I spoke yesterday at a rally in Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, to be precise, on behalf of Israel, noting, as I have on the show, that if you cannot call Hamas evil, it is only a reflection on you. You have either an agenda of Israel's destruction, or you are so blindsided and indeed blinded by propaganda of the left that it's a very sad and worrisome situation. You know, they speak on the left about intersectionality. You've all heard about that, right? Intersectionality. Everything's related to something else. So that even though gays have full rights in Israel and have no rights in almost any Muslim country, and certainly Israel's neighbors, nevertheless, a gay should support the anti-Israel crowd. Right? That is the argument of LGBT. We have no rights among the Palestinians. We have all rights among the Jews, but nevertheless support the Palestinian aim of exterminating Israel, because it's intersectional. You have to be anti-West, anti-colonialist, etc., if you are LGBTQ. So I was thinking, there really is intersectionality. I have sort of modified my view on it. There is intersectionality on the left. And it came across beautifully during the Palestinian or the Gazans, or really Hamas's massive attempt to murder as many Israelis as possible, and Israel's response. Now, let me ask you a question. If you say men give birth, what are the chances of your being pro-Hamas? Interesting question, isn't it? By golly, there is intersectionality. What are the odds of a person who says men give birth supporting in this last war Hamas? I would say the odds are 99-1. Nearly 100% of those who say that will be pro-Hamas. What percentage of people who say no, only women give birth, will be pro-Israel? Again, I suspect that the percentage is virtually overwhelming. Not virtually, is overwhelming. Now, one would ask, why does one have anything to do with the other? Whether or not you believe men give birth, why should that have anything to do with whom you supported in the last couple of weeks, Hamas or Israel? And think about it. What is the answer to that question? It's not easy. It's the obvious answer is you don't think clearly on any issue. So therefore, if you don't think clearly on any issue, you don't think clearly on any issue. Okay. But that's true. But it's not enough. It's your ability to digest reality, moral reality, and reality is compromised. Or you believe only what the left tells you to believe. That might be hitting it more accurately. You believe men give birth, you're adamant about it. You even tell us science backs you up. And by the way, the list is long. The people who think you should wear masks after being vaccinated, I'll bet you the great majority of those are pro-Hamas. What does that have to do with anything, right? It's a phenomenon. It is truly a phenomenon. It's worth making a list. If you believe X, then you will believe A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And if you believe Y, you will believe H, I, J, K, L, M, N. Right? Basically, people agree on nothing. Nothing. If you believe, how about this? If you believed that there was Russian collusion with the Trump campaign, I'll bet you were more likely to be pro-Hamas. Now, why would that be? What does one have to do with the other? Because the left told you to believe something. Doesn't matter if it's true. Doesn't matter if it's moral. That's why I have said for years that the gulf between left and right is unbridgeable. It's not on one or two issues. Well, welcome to the show. I'm Dennis Prager. Glad to be with you. PBS station defends drag queen skit for kids. Performance art that can inspire creative thinking. A PBS station, that's the public broadcasting system, that is government-funded radio, TV, I should say, is getting attention for airing a children's program, this is from Fox News, May 20, that features a singing and dancing drag queen. The skit was part of a Let's Learn television series that is produced in partnership with WNET and the New York City Department of Education. Whenever I hear Department of Education or PhD in education, I assume a fool. There are exceptions, but that's my assumption. Footage surfaced on social media with the drag queen known as Little Miss Hot Mess promoting their book. Why does it say there?
Isn't it obvious?
No, it's not obvious. They do not deny that they're male. Unless Little Miss Hot Miss claims no sex, no gender, as they put it. Really? All right. The hips on the drag queen go swish, swish, swish. It goes to the tune of the what is it? The wheels on the bus go round, round, round. The hips on the drag queen go swish, swish, swish. This is what was aired on New York PBS. The combination of New York City and PBS is more or less a guarantee of the destruction of a child's innocence. The desire to destroy children's innocence is another aspect of the left that comports with the rule, the unbreakable, uncompromised rule that everything the left touches, it ruins. Children is one of them. During the program, Lil Miss Hot Mess danced and sang to the tune of the wheels on the bus. The hips on the drag queen go swish, 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 sang Lil Miss Hot Mess. The Let's Learn website says the program is for children ages 3 to 8. Yeah. What do you think about that? What does your liberal brother-in-law think about that? All right, my friends, 1-8-PRAGER-776. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. Did I miss a cue? What did you say to me when you spoke into the microphone?
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
And I'm afraid that we have become so in love with this idea of kind of horse jockeying. I kind of prefer that phrase, quite honestly, better than competition. So I think that there's some, again, we're getting into semantics here. But I guess what I'm trying to say is if your whole life is just trying to outdo another person, that's actually not what's good for society. Ayn Rand had a wonderful quote about this, and I get beat up all the time by Christians for quoting Ayn Rand. I just don't think you understand Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand was an outspoken atheist, but by the end of her life, there's a great piece written by Steve Mariotti, who claims that Ayn Rand accepted that there was a God. In fact, can you find that piece, Steve Mariotti, Ayn Rand's Hidden Religion? It's very good. It's totally debated by Ayn Rand atheists. But Ayn Rand had a phenomenal quote that says, "I will not make you live for another person. Do not make me live for you." And Ayn Rand had a very provocative statement in her magnum opus, Atlas Shrugged, which I think is a terrific book. And again, I don't look for her for religious purpose. I'm a Bible-believing evangelical Christian. But I think that she had a phenomenal way of capturing the threat of totalitarianism and the need for individuals to stand with courage. The preference on reason and logic, not as the only human value in my worldview. And it's a very significant piece of literature, and I encourage everyone to check it out. So in a lot of different ways, we need more John Galt's and Hank Reardons. And that little snapshot of Atlas Shrugged does a phenomenal job of that. But Ayn Rand had another quote, and I'm going to find it in a second, where Ayn argued that the most immoral thing you can do is to say that you're living just to beat others.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We've got millions of jobs empty because people are picking up $600 extra to stay at home on top of their unemployment. So is that not a countervailing piece of evidence to the fact that Americans believe in capitalism if they're sitting at home just waiting for that government handout?
Because they are capitalists, right? They're not stupid. I mean, it's pretty hard to compete when Uncle Joe's offering $600 not to get off your couch. It's pretty hard to say, okay, now I'm going to go wash dishes. $300 from federal, often $300 from state. So you get to a number that in many cases is like $600, which is better than washing dishes. But you see a lot of people in this environment, I believe, are still doing things in the gig economy, right? For cash under the table. This troubles me because I don't want to be like Europe, and that's exactly what happens in Europe. You have a very high unemployment rate, typically, but a lot of people are doing things under the table. I mean, can we talk Greece for a second, right? Where part of their problem was nobody was paying their taxes. We don't want a system like that. I think Americans overall, I've got to believe, don't want that. I do think they take advantage of the situation as it is. They're not dumb. People are logical, and Uncle Joe's paying well.
I'm going to take my life in my hands here and live on radio in front of millions. I'm going to correct Trish Regan. In Greece, where they were taking money under the table, where they are taking money under the table. I lived there for 20... Oh my gosh, how long did I live? 28 years. Europeans, they love that cash economy. Pay me under the table. Who needs a receipt?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hugh Hewitt, I'm joined now by Florida Senator Rick Scott. Good morning, Senator.
The PBS report I'm giving you is a good segue into BJU Press, homeschool.com. The stuff that subverts your child's innocence, that is now pandemic. That's the pandemic I fear. Television and movies and, of course, school. That's why a lot of people are tuning out and educating their kids on their own. For almost 50 years, BJU Press has been producing academically solid textbooks and video lessons that enable students to form a perspective on life rooted in Christian values. And you can learn about, for example, there's not one page in science that does not demonstrate the omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence of the Creator. To learn more about BJU Press's biblically based K through 12 materials, visit bjupresshomeschool.com. That's bjupresshomeschool.com. I remind Sean, who asks me very often how you spell BJU. It's actually spelled the way it sounds. So that should be a giveaway. B as in Baltimore, J as in Jewish, U as in underpants. I actually do that with every so often. I book a ticket by phone. I will make up silly words. And it is a sort of game I play with myself. Usually it's a woman, will the woman laugh at some point? Like the U for underpants. And sometimes nothing happens. PBS station, right? So they're now drag queen story hours not only coming to your kids in schools and libraries, but on PBS. Of course we pay for it. The book's cover, let's see. Let's Learn storybooks are selected by early literacy experts. Experts! That's all you need. For the college educated, then they do it. Experts say. What does it mean, early literacy experts? So this helps early literacy, a drag queen? How were kids literate in the past before drag queen story hours? Boy, they were really at a disadvantage, weren't they? To think that I grew up without a drag queen story hour, learned to read, I'd have been literate much earlier. The book's cover features various drag queens, including one named, are you ready? Did you read this whole article? Cinderfella. That's healthy. Cinderfella. It is witty. You got to admit it. Cinderfella. Who donned a blue mustache and long blue hair. Said Lil Miss Hot Mess, I wrote this book because I wanted everyone to get to experience the magic of drag and to get a little practice shaking their hips or shimmying their shoulders to know how we can feel fabulous inside of our own bodies. That is what you want your kids to be doing, right? Shimmying their shoulders and shaking their hips to a guy dressed as a female. Remember, this is not even transgender. This is a cisgender male, to use their lingo. The rapidity with which civilization is being undermined is breathtaking. It's faster than the speed of sound or the speed of light. It's approaching the speed of light. The left is dismantling society 186,000 miles per second. You want your kids to watch this? Why do parents allow this? I think we should put this article here. We should put this up at DennisPrager.com. It's one of those things it's worth asking your Democratic Party voting relative or friend. about? Do you think this is a good thing?
They have always had an answer.
And what is their answer for it?
It's just an exception. You're going for the.
Oh, it's an accept. PBS in New York City, largest city in the country, the public broadcasting system is an exception? Okay. That they could have said it if it was one Des Moines library. It's not quite that way. Judge denies College of the Ozarks request to sidestep anti-discrimination housing rule. There's a Christian college, College of the Ozarks in Missouri. This is from the Springfield News Leader. I went to the source of the sources here. I went through 3 things to get to the source, so you wouldn't think I got this from a conservative news site. This is the Springfield, Missouri News Leader. Do you still have a subscription? It lapsed?
Always
Okay, no, good man. A federal judge rejected the College of the Ozarks' request to sidestep a 2021 directive backed by President Joe Biden that bans discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity, so that transgender females, that's biological males who identify as females, can now shower and live in the dorm and share a dorm room with a biological female, even at a Christian college, must do so. By the way, this is by presidential edict. It's not even passed by Congress. Is there anything a president can't do now? The college and ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, which we support here, argued the directive forced religious schools to violate their views by opening male or female residence halls, including dorm rooms and restrooms, to members of the opposite sex. That's a fact. That's a fact. That's what is being done. Biden's executive order, signed January 20th, states, quote, all persons should receive equal treatment under the law, no matter their gender identity or sexual orientation. Unquote. Any entity that violates the order faces financial penalties. The suit filed in the Western District of Missouri State's HUD's directive, quote, requires private religious colleges to place biological males into female dormitories and to assign them as females' roommates. There you go. And if the girl or her parents object to having a biological male as the roommate, they are haters, bigots, and what is it? Christian nationalists. Is that one of the terms that they use? Welcome to America 2021.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Sam Giancana, the godfather of Chicago, was friends with Joseph Kennedy.
You bet.
The patriarch of the Kennedy family. Well, Giancana made damn sure that Illinois went for JFK in 1960.
Yeah.
And that was enough, along with West Virginia, to get JFK to defeat Richard Nixon. And that's a fact. And so when JFK took the presidency, the mob was so happy, it thought, wow, now we got, juice in the White House. Well, little did they know that JFK appointed his brother, Bobby Kennedy, Attorney General, and Bobby Kennedy went after the mob with a ferocity because nobody at the federal level had ever done that before.
Joseph Kennedy, the patriarch, he was as dirty as they come. And it's an extraordinary thing. It is right out of The Godfather. We're going to go legitimate. I want my son to be a U.S. senator. The idea that somebody who was awash in criminal contact, becomes the ambassador to the Court of St. James. His son becomes the president of the United States. It's astonishing and sickening kind of story at the heart of America in the 20th century.
Joseph Kennedy wasn't a criminal. He had friends who were. He dealt in that world. and he provided a tremendous amount of money to his family through dubious enterprises. But he wasn't part of the mob, but he had influence there.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Let me just cut right to the chase for you. I played these clips. Chris Cuomo, Shepard Smith, the CDC director, started getting pushback from the left. This week, as she was making her normal rounds, Rochelle Walensky was starting to get really pressed on this by lefty journalists. And she was shaken. And she said, wait a minute. I mean, that's scenario A. Scenario B is Biden's looking around saying, what are we going to do to get people vaccinated? We don't have enough people vaccinated. And his team is saying, well, Mr. Nine Masks, as you're stumbling around outside the east lawn of the White House or the south lawn or whatever it is, how about we tell people if they get vaccinated, they don't have to wear a mask? That'll be an incentive. It's one of two things. Let me break it to you. It ain't the science. It's not the science. No more masks inside if you're fully vaccinated, they're telling us. All right, number one, how do you know who's vaccinated and who's not? How do you figure that out? Because that's what's going to be the next pivot, right? Is that you think they're going to let us use the honor system? Maybe they will, because Biden has also said he's not in favor of mandatory vaccine passports federally. So how is that going to work? And number two, riddle me this, Batman. How are the blue state governors reacting to the CDC guidance?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
All right, you are listening to the Dennis Prager Show. I'm currently battling an earphone, and the earphone is winning. You know, when you lose to an earphone, it's humbling. It puts you in your place. David, Culver City, California. Hello.
Hi, Dennis. One thing you keep repeating over and over again that really bothers me, I wish you would explain it. Why is it irrational to think that trans men, who are biological females, of course, can have babies? I mean, I understand you might not agree with the whole concept of changing gender, but I mean, it's not irrational. I mean, they're biological females, so of course they can have babies. And that's what, when somebody says men can have babies, of course they're referring to trans men.
Then they should say trans men. They're dishonest. It's a completely dishonest statement. 100% lie that men give birth. It is not a lie that trans men give birth. If they want to say trans men give birth, I will say nothing. They're lying, and you fell for it. You are no. It's not shorthand. It's a lie. It's not shorthand.
It is. It's
okay.
Not a lie, Dennis.
Okay. Men give birth is a lie. Trans men give birth is not a lie.
Men, I don't think a lot of people would say trans men. They're just saying men.
You're the one who said it.
It's not irrational.
Of course it's irrational. Men don't give... Okay.
Dennis.
Yeah.
Dennis, you're not always right, but you're never in doubt.
No, I'm often in doubt. And then, because I'm in doubt, I think rationally, and then I become certain until I get better arguments, which you did not provide. Trans men give birth. If you said that, you would be honest. You tried your own sleight of hand to fool yourself and thought you'd fool me too, but it didn't work. 1-8-PRAGER 776-877-243-7776. So we're talking about more of this stuff now. This College of the Ozarks, a Christian college, any college, by the way. I don't know why you have to be a Christian college. I would like to ask the average liberal parent if they're okay with their daughter having as a roommate a trans female, a biological male with the appendages that come with being male, etc., and as the roommate of their daughter. Does that make you a hater or a bigot? And therefore, no, it's fine. I think it would be great if my daughter had a trans female as a roommate. Blake said the suit filed, let's see, requires private religious colleges to place biological males into female dormitories and to assign them as females' roommates. There you go. But a lot of people who voted for the Democrats said, I'm not going to vote for a Republican. The consequences of voting for the Democrats don't matter. I'll talk to you about inflation. Americans are already buying less beef, which is fine with the left, by the way. They think it's great. However, there's almost nothing as healthy as beef in most people's diets. I know you can lead a perfectly healthy life as a vegetarian. My wife is a vegetarian. Therefore, I am married to a vegetarian. She's very healthy. I'm completely aware of that. For most human beings on planet Earth, meat is one of the most healthful foods they can eat. I remember reading about Jordan Peterson. He was a great man, a great thinker. And Jordan Peterson's daughter had a terrible genetic illness from chronic illness and genetic illness from birth. Went through surgery after surgery. And finally, they happened upon the idea of an all-meat diet, and she is in perfect health. No more surgeries, nothing. She's a beautiful young woman, brilliant young woman for that matter, and she can be seen on her own podcasts about her father's life, etc. That awakened me to the health-filled possibilities of meat. But whatever you think about meat, most people eat it. And now the price is skyrocketing, as it is for gas and so on, because we're printing money like it's monopoly money in order to fund the left-wing states, the democratic states that have irresponsibly gone into horrible debt. Wait till I tell you about the budgets of colleges. Talk about expenditures of money. So anyway, what do you think? Should the College of the Ozarks be forced to accept biological males in the showers with the females and their dorm room buddies? 1-8-PRAGER 776. Relief Factor is one of the most remarkable products that I have ever advertised. They're on a mission. The Talbots, the father and son, Pete and Seth Talbot. I've met them. They're impressive people. They're actually committed Christians who have a very wonderful life of doing good. Try it out for 2 weeks for $19.95 plus shipping. Doesn't work in 3 weeks, or did I say 2 weeks? 3 weeks. If it doesn't work, it probably won't work. Cancel your order. But for $19.95, you should try it if you have any aches. 800-500-8384, relieffactor.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Hi, Charlie. My name is Jacob, and I am subscribed. My question is, are we as Republicans radical in our ideals? Or rather, does the left see us as radicals? If they do, what can we do to convince leftists that what we want is best for legal Americans, in most cases including them? Well, radical actually means to the root, to the original. If you actually go back to the original phrase of what radical means, But what you're really saying is radical, are we out of the mainstream? No, they are. What we are talking about is very acceptable public policy. How about this? You put your citizens first. Families are important. You put the citizen over the foreigner. Your trade deals should preserve and protect hardware development and middle-class work. Free markets are a great guide to be able to produce wealth and preserve what we have considered to be a rather enjoyable lifestyle. Private property is important. At the same time, we're not going to bow down and accept a corporate oligarchy. These are very moderate ideas. If you want radical, I'll go show you some radical ideas. Those are not radical ideas. Our ideas built Western civilization. Of course, they're not outside of the mainstream. And what they're doing, again, we have used this phrase so many times, and it's important because it just seems to be, there's about 15 things that we talk about here on this program that this is kind of buckets. So I just have to kind of sometimes draw from this bucket and draw from that bucket. This is the gaslighting bucket. We talk about that a lot on this program.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Rovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694. 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not. Hello, everybody. Here is the issue with Michaela. And Michaela is Jordan Peterson's daughter. She has her own broadcast, and I misrepresented. It's not just about her father. I heard her a lot about her father's condition. She has her own podcast, which is worth watching. And I just mentioned in passing about her use of meat. I'm going to have her on. I think it'll be fascinating to people, as well as other aspects of her life. I promote an unusual diet that has allowed me to get off over 10 medications and put my several seemingly incurable lifelong diseases into complete remission. By the age of 22, I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, age 7, depression, age 12, bipolar type 2, idiopathic hypersomnia, Lyme disease, psoriasis, and dyshydrotic eczema. She has none of that. None of it. She has an all-meat diet. I'm not saying it's for everybody. My producer is essentially, he has other foods as well, but you have meat every day, right? And he's doing very well, I might add. See, if they would only tell the truth, it would be fine with me. If you say, you know what, meat is good for you, but it's bad for the planet because of global warming. Okay, so then you can then weigh. It's good for me, but there's an existential threat to all living beings because of global warming. Now, if you believe the latter, then you should put your health at risk, and not have any meat because you don't want you and the rest of biological life to be extinct. But of course, on the other hand, if you believe global warming is an existential threat, then we have left the realm of reason. By the way, anybody who believes that and does not advocate nuclear power is a phony. Their agenda has nothing to do with the environment and everything to do with some romantic view of solar and wind, or simply crushing the economy as we know it. Listening to the news today that here in California we can expect more rolling blackouts this summer. This is the year 2021, and the richest state in the Union, one of the richest states on earth as a country, California, cannot provide electricity to its citizens at different times in the summer. That's what we call truly pathetic. And it's all because of the environmentalists and their agendas and the lack of concentration on providing power. If we had nuclear power, there would be no issue. No issue. We have all the power we want, no carbon emissions, but solutions are not what the left wants. Destruction is what they want. Nuclear power is the solution. The solution. Those who worry about nuclear power as dangerous don't know what they're talking about and are in the category of those who believe you should be masked after you have a vaccination or after you got COVID. It is amazing, isn't it, how secular society produces staggering numbers of irrational people? Many years ago, I wrote a piece, How the Left Keeps Me Religious. It's one of the most important things I ever wrote. If I were in doubt, and I'm always in doubt in this regard, it's very important to have holy doubt. That's what I would call it, holy doubt. If God wanted us to be certain about God and faith, and he would have made us certain. It is a healthy thing to struggle with God. In fact, the name Israel means struggle with God. It's in Genesis. I meant to tweet out, I guess I still will. I said something a few weeks ago that religious people, religious people, yes, allow themselves to argue with God more than secular people allow themselves to argue with experts. I said it better, and I have it. Thank God for Robert Untitled, who has the largest collection, I think. There's another man, John Steinbeck, who's done it too. But I think he has the largest collection of ideas that I have stated in the course of my career. Isn't that interesting, though? Religious people struggle with God more than secular struggle with experts. Once you become aware of it, it is overwhelming how often the mainstream media say, experts say. Experts say. Just like the last article I read to you, PBS is having drag queens give story readings like Cinderella to kids 3 to 8 because early childhood experts in literacy say it's a good idea. It's a good idea. I should read to you, we should get some of the readers that kids used in American history between 3 and 8 to teach character and compare them to Cinderella. Yeah, we want you to feel very happy with your body. So let's shake those hips. That's what you really want in your son, sitting at the TV watching a guy dressed in a dress and your son shaking his hips and shimmying his shoulders. That's what Jews would say, nachas, joy and pride in one's child. Look at my son shimmy. That's a source of pride. Why would we have them read a book about character development when they could see a drag queen?
The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief. Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hugh Hewitt. I'm joined now by Florida Senator Rick Scott. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
Good morning, boy. You can tell we have a new president. Look at all the problems we have around the world.
Well, I am astonished. I am astonished by the fact that Andrew Yang, who would be mayor of New York, had to walk back his comments in support of Israel. What are your comments on the attack on Israel, Senator Scott, and the Democratic reaction to it?
Well, first off, it's disgusting. I've been in Israel quite a bit, and I was right next to the Gaza Strip, and I was in the bomb shelters. They were showing me. Fortunately, there were no missiles when I was down there, but they showed me how the Iron Dome worked. They've shown me what their security is for all their citizens, and it's disgusting what's going on. We need to stand up for Israel. We need to stop trying to make friends with Iran. They're not our friends. We need to tell Iran, you want to talk to us? You're going to stop being a state sponsor of terrorism. Stop talking to the Palestinians. They're not out there to help create peace. All they do is cause havoc. So stand up for Israel. I mean, quit being Biden's just this weak president that he wants to be everybody's friend, which means he's nobody's friend.
Now, you are the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee in this cycle, which means you're responsible for getting the majority back. Arizona, Georgia, New Hampshire, and Nevada, those are the four Democratic major vulnerabilities. But I'm curious whether or not the Biden administration initial failure and jobs number very low, inflation very high, is that encouraging people to come to you and explore races?
It's doing two things. One, there's more people that want to run. Two, there's more people who want to help make sure we win.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Sam Giancana, the godfather of Chicago, was friends with Joseph Kennedy.
You bet.
The patriarch of the Kennedy family. Well, Giancana made damn sure that Illinois went for JFK in 1960.
Yeah.
And that was enough, along with West Virginia, to get JFK to defeat Richard Nixon. And that's a fact. And so when JFK took the presidency, the mob was so happy, it thought, wow, now we got, juice in the White House. Well, little did they know that JFK appointed his brother, Bobby Kennedy, Attorney General, and Bobby Kennedy went after the mob with a ferocity because nobody at the federal level had ever done that before.
Joseph Kennedy, the patriot.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Dennis Prager Show. And let's see here. Good. There we go. Frank, Chatsworth, California. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, you keep repeating that the left believes that men can give birth. And I'm a liberal with friends on the left, and they don't believe that. Maybe 20 people in the country actually believe that. And contrast that with the hundreds of thousands of QAnon supporters on the right who believe that the country is run by a liberal cabal of pedophiles. Somehow you never mentioned that group.
Yeah, I know nothing about QAnon, and I know everything about men give birth. Nothing. You're surprised because you've been brainwashed.
In the news.
I don't know a single conservative who knows anything about QAnon. It is if it exists, and I'm sure it does. I want you to know.
I suggest you do.
Okay, my friend.
I suggest you do your research.
No. I have no interest in doing research on something that has no impact on the country. Men give birth has an enormous impact on the country.
Who believes it?
Who believes it? The left believes it. Teachers believe it.
No, they don't.
Okay, then you don't. Okay. All right, listen,
Yeah,
we've clarified where we differ. You think nobody on the left except 20 people believe it. Good. So we're clear. I don't argue when there's clarity about our difference. On my fireside chat last week, by the way, that is a common thing when I raise things that the left, the New York Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post, PBS, they all announce men give birth. The cover of USA Today is men give birth. The cover story. Oh, what date is it? Okay. Yes, today. All right? Just want you to know. On Nation and Health, the cover story. Sorry, that section. Okay. That's why they're called pregnant people now, all through the country. QAnon versus that. QAnon has no impact on this country. Men give birth is changing everything. The ability of people on the left to fool themselves is the longest living sadness that I have in the United States. I have a great fireside chat where I took apart, was it John Oliver, on his rant, anti-Israel propaganda, hate-filled rant against Israel. And I took it apart in my fireside chat. You should watch it at PragerU. I challenged him to a debate, and now it has been taken up by change.org. So you could sign the petition there to have John Oliver and Dennis Prager debate. I will go anywhere in the country. He doesn't have to travel more than 2 miles from his house. I will debate him at his house if he wants. This is proof. They never debate. They smear. They smear, but they don't debate. This is as true about New York Times columnists as it is about John Oliver, because they always lose.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We've got millions of jobs empty because people are picking up $600 extra to stay at home on top of their unemployment. So is that not a countervailing piece of evidence to the fact that Americans believe in capitalism if they're sitting at home just waiting for that government handout?
Because they are capitalists, right? They're not stupid. I mean, it's pretty hard to compete when Uncle Joe's offering $600 not to get off your couch. It's pretty hard to say, okay, now I'm going to go wash dishes. $300 from federal, often $300 from state. So you get to a number that in many cases is like $600, which is better than washing dishes. But you see a lot of people in this environment, I believe, are still doing things in the gig economy, right? For cash under the table. This troubles me because I don't want to be like Europe, and that's exactly what happens in Europe. You have a very high unemployment rate, typically, but a lot of people are doing things under the table. I mean, can we talk Greece for a second, right? Where part of their problem was nobody was paying their taxes. We don't want a system like that. I think Americans overall, I've got to believe, don't want that. I do think they take advantage of the situation as it is. They're not dumb. People are logical, and Uncle Joe's paying well.
I'm going to take my life in my hands here and live on radio in front of millions. I'm going to correct Trish Regan. In Greece, where they were taking money under the table, where they are taking money under the table. I lived there for how long did I live? 28 years. Europeans, they love that cash economy. Pay me under the table. Who needs a receipt?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, One precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Grovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not one mistake.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Burka.
Israel's enemies hate, number one, women, they're misogynists. Number two, they hate homosexuals. They're utter homophobic. In fact, they like to kill homosexuals. And lastly, they hate atheists. They like to kill atheists. But the left is on their side. How does that work, Joel Pollak?
Well, Israel also loves certain things that the left doesn't like. Israel loves family. Israel loves territory. Israel loves the right to self-defense, the right to bear arms. They don't have the equivalent of the Second Amendment, but you certainly see a lot of people who are armed in Israel,
Yes.
and the country has a very low murder rate. There's very little crime involved.
I've been, for those who've never been to Israel, I've been like, I don't know how many times, a dozen times. You've never been on holiday or on a business trip unless you've gone to a disco and you've seen somebody from the IDF with their slung M16 on their back on the dance floor. It's something else.
I'll one-up you there. You haven't been to a beach until you've seen girls in bikinis with M16s.
Right.
On the sand in Tel Aviv. No, it's just a society that's comfortable with firearms. And these are things that Israel believes in and the left does not believe in. Israel believes also in assimilation. When people come to Israel, they are put through an intensive language training so that they can speak Hebrew, the main language in Israel. Although English and Arabic are also official languages, people are taught Hebrew, and they're taught the cultural and religious traditions of the society so they can fit in. And there's a really comprehensive, intense effort to do that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we witnessed his first miracle.
This is the most profound discovery in human history. This discovery proves that he is coming back.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out.
I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
When there's chaos, when there's pandemics, when there's riots, people think, where is God? God always manages to reemerge.
This Constitution is intended for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America. You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. I was under constant
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and I welcome you to the show. I remind you, it is a 3-hour show. If you don't get all 3 hours, and you think the hour you do get or the 2 hours you do get is valuable, believe me, 3 are very. Hence, Pragertopia.com makes all the hours available and commercial free. And it is time to welcome a new station. And it is in Harrisonburg, Virginia. The new affiliate starting today, News Talk 92.1, or 92.1 as it's called, and 550 WSVA. I've been to Harrisonburg, Virginia. Good to have you, my friends. In a nutshell, I explain life. That's it. That's my task. Explaining life and giving recommendations on that basis. I'm about to read to you from one of the more frightening pieces about America that I've ever read. The movement of Portland, Oregon toward a totalitarian state. Let me explain what totalitarianism is. And I got this from, who was the brilliant ambassador to the UN? Jean Kirkpatrick, yeah, whom I knew, by the way. Jean Kirkpatrick wrote a piece for Commentary magazine, 40 years ago. Well, Ronald Reagan appointed her on the basis of that piece, so it had to be, I'd say, about late 1970s. And she wrote a piece describing the difference between authoritarian and totalitarian. I think I can explain it to you clearly. Talking about explaining life. In an authoritarian regime, you can do whatever you want except for a list of things that the authoritarian regime does not allow. Is that clear? In a totalitarian regime, you cannot do anything except that which the regime allows. It's a big difference. Well, totalitarian is far more controlling. I might add, it also wants to control your thoughts. That what is happening in Portland, and it is in one of the two most important journals, City Journal, by one of the great writers of our time, Christopher Rufo, who's a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, which publishes this. So I'm going to read to you excerpts. It's a very long piece. He's talking about what's happening in the Portland area educational districts, school districts, the child soldiers of Portland. It is up at DennisPrager.com. Educators at the Tigard Tualatin School District have gone all in on the social justice trinity of diversity, equity, and inclusion. By the way, I have a theory on that. I have a lot of theories, as you know. The world consists of trinities. The most famous trinity is the Christian Trinity, Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, or Holy Ghost, right? The Jews have a trinity, God, Torah, Israel. It's 2,000 years old, that formulation. America has a trinity, E pluribus unum, in God we trust, liberty. The left has a trinity, race, gender, class. And here's the newest trinity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Isn't that interesting? The world consists of trinities. Daniel, good to see you. I want you all to know that Daniel was sitting in for 5 minutes for Sean. Daniel, I heard you on the radio today. Yes, sir. You were very good. Superintendent last June, at the height of the nationwide unrest, Superintendent Sue Rika Smith and Board Chair Maureen Wolf signed a proclamation, quote, condemning racism and committing to being an anti-racist school district. The district announced a new Department of Equity and Inclusion and installed social justice activist Zinnia Un as director. Un quickly created a blueprint, which I have obtained through a whistleblower, for overhauling the pedagogy and curriculum at Tigard Tualatin schools. In her blueprint, Un describes the new oppressor as an amalgamation of whiteness, colorblindness, individualism, and meritocracy. These are the values of capitalist society, but for Un, they are the values of white society, the primary impediment to social justice. Let me review that, my dear friends. In Oregon, the oppressor is whiteness, colorblindness, individualism, and meritocracy. I love colorblindness, I love individualism, and I love meritocracy. They are what made America exceptional and great, which it has been. It is flawed because it consists of human beings who are very flawed. No one quite as flawed as the left, but nevertheless flawed. Well, obviously, slave owners had flaws, and Jim Crow enthusiasts. I mean, we've always had flawed individuals, but today, the flawed individual is the uns of our society. So whiteness consists of colorblindness, individualism, and meritocracy. That is now declared whiteness and must be eradicated. Colorblindness is what God wants. Okay? That is my belief, as much as God wants us to love our neighbor or not to murder. God wants us to be colorblind. Okay? As I say in any speech at a university, color doesn't mean a damn thing. Kids are shocked. Any audience is now shocked to hear someone say it publicly. Color doesn't mean anything. The color of your skin is as important as the color of your shoes or the color of your hair or the color of your eyes. Okay? Just for the record. These people are despicable fools to make color important. They are pure, undiluted racists. 99% of racism in this country is from the left. This is an example. They are fighting colorblindness. Every one of you liberals who votes Democrat is voting for a war against colorblindness. But it's enough to hate the Republicans and the right to vote such people in. That's the brainwash you've gotten and live by. Many of you are wonderful people, and I'm not kidding. Individualism, that's right. The unique American belief that the individual is sacred. That is correct. That is the belief. That too is a Judeo-Christian belief. Every human being is uniquely important. Not because of color, but because of who they are. And meritocracy, you reward merit. That's correct. That's why shortstops get a lot of money. They have a lot of merit. Shall we abolish meritocracy in sports? Why is it okay for sports and not okay for law or medicine or construction? Right? Tell me, why is merit? I would like this woman would never debate any more than John Oliver would debate. They never debate. Because when you don't get challenged, you can say anything, no matter how stupid. They're trying to indoctrinate the children, the father observed, talking about a father of one of the children in the Portland schools. He believes that the intention is to turn child against parent. Whoa. Another neon light here. The intention is to turn child against parent. That is how I know the left is a cult. The first thing cults do is diminish parental authority. The biggest opposition to cults is strong parents. That's why the left is what awakened me to the importance of honor your father and mother and the 10 Commandments. 1-8-PRAGER-776.
Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we witnessed his first miracle.
This is the most profound discovery in human history. This discovery proves that he is coming back.
Obama tore this country down. No one stood up to him. Nobody.
My parents didn't teach me that I was a victim.
And Uncle Tom is somebody who has sold out.
I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
Most black people don't believe that other blacks can be independent, free thinkers.
When there's chaos, when there's pandemics, when there's riots, people think, where is God? God always manages to reemerge.
This Constitution is intended for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
I mean, I remember sitting in an enclosed wooden structure out on a street in Manhattan 6 months or so ago, and it was completely enclosed, had heaters going. I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm inside an enclosed space on the street. Why can't I just be inside the enclosed restaurant? And the restaurant owner, who I'm friends with, she said, it's crazy, but this is okay with New York, but opening my restaurant inside is not. Buddy, it makes no sense. None of it makes sense, and no wonder nobody trusts anybody.
Mike, how about me having to close in Florida and then flying in a plane right next to two people, right, in Florida, right? So I'm in New York. I got to get on a plane to get to Florida to look at real estate to open a restaurant, and I'm in a packed plane. I mean, how does that make any sense?
I know. There's nothing, let's face it, there's nothing about the last year and a half that's made sense. But one thing that does make sense is if you take away government assistance because of the pandemic, you're going to motivate people to work. I saw you on Fox and Friends talking about how business is booming in Florida and how different it is in New York. Can you talk a little bit about Florida's decision to take away the coronavirus assistance money, the pandemic assistance money, what that's doing in terms of being able to hire people in the workforce?
Well, first I want to give credit to the FLRA, the Florida Lodging and Restaurant Association. They're just incredible here in Florida. And they got a top, and they're very good at the political environment, and they put out a message.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
So Laureen Powell Jobs, or Lauren, however she pronounces her name, she is now, according to Alex Marlow, editor of Breitbart.com, the new George Soros, pumping millions and millions of dollars towards social leftist activist causes. And so I want to be very clear. She does not want to destroy America. She wants it to be hers. And it's not just her. There is an entire network of Jeff Bezos to Zuckerberg, of these oligarchs that are pumping in billions of dollars. Mark Zuckerberg put $400 million through the Center for Technology and Civic Life into this last election. $400 million. Jeff Bezos, with his play money, owns the Washington Post, which propagandizes you and your children through
Oh, no, actually, what I want to tell you for a moment, I'm happy to tell you about them, but I want to remind you actually about Pure Talk. How would you like to save about $800 per family on your phone cost? It sounded too good to be true. You get unlimited talk, unlimited text, 6 gigabytes of data. You go over, you don't have to pay for it, and for $30 a month. It struck me as a little too good to be true, so I actually got a phone, sign up a second number. By the way, you don't have to give up your number. You don't have to give up your phone. But I took another number, another phone, through Pure Talk, signed up. It's the same service, it's the same service as equivalent to Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. Except it saves you a fortune of money. Okay? It's from your cell phone. You dial pound 250, say Dennis Prager. Save 50% off your first month in addition. Pound 250, pound 250, and say Dennis Prager, Pure Talk, USA. I am reading to you about what goes on in the Portland school districts. So this is an article that's up at DennisPrager.com. Talking now, this part is about a father here. He says they believe their intention is to turn child against parent. After the anti-racism lessons, his child felt torn between school and family, sometimes crying in confusion. Quote, they're slowly going to get behind their defenses, get behind their parents' defenses, and create little social justice warriors, the father said. They're trying to hyper-empathize and hyper-emotionalize the children in order to get them to be more receptive to some sort of revolution. That's exactly right. But why does the father keep his son in the school there? Your children are taught to have contempt for everything you value, unless you're a true revolutionary leftist. According to drafts of the ethnic studies standards, teachers will require kindergartners to learn, quote, the difference between private and public ownership of goods and capital. Kindergartners. But basically make them into radical leftist communists, essentially. And develop understanding of identity formation related to self, family, community, gender, and disability. That's in kindergarten. Why would you keep your child in such a school? I'm asking any of you who have children or grandchildren. Pay your children oodles of money to homeschool them or to put them in a school that isn't teaching in kindergarten drag queen study hour or identity formation based on gender. In first grade, they will learn how, quote, to define equity, equality, and systems of power. Examine social construction as it relates to race, ethnicity, gender, disabilities, and sexual orientation. That's just what you want your first grader to learn, isn't it? And describe how individual and group characteristics are used to divide, unite, and categorize racial, ethnic, and social groups. In 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, students must deconstruct the U.S. Constitution, uncover, quote, systems of power including white supremacy, institutional racism, racial hierarchy, and oppression, and examine the consequences of power and privilege on issues associated with poverty, income, and the accumulation of wealth. Make their children into Marxists. That was 3rd and 4th grade. If the elementary school curriculum sets the premise that the U.S. is the great oppressor, then the middle school and high school curricula deliver the conclusion. The learning standards read like an old left-wing pamphlet. Students must internalize the principles of race-based, quote, subversion, resistance, challenge, and perseverance. They must fight against the structural and systemic oppression of capitalism, authority, religion, and government, and they must commit to the pursuit of social justice. Then describing a teacher, she and other teachers must submit to mandatory anti-racism training each week. Each week. Mandatory. Quote, "From the beginning, we were told that we couldn't question the anti-racism program. I called human resources and asked them if I needed to profess that I believe in critical race theory and if I had to teach from this perspective. And I was told that I need to understand it. I need to know all about it, and I could probably lose my job if I didn't teach that way. If my principal is super into making sure the teachers are using this lens as they teach." At Forest Park, Whitman, and Marysville elementary schools, a teacher named Sarita Flores, who runs the information technology program, has transformed her role into that of a political inquisitor. According to leaked internal documents and whistleblower testimony, Flores holds weekly anti-racism sessions in which white teachers are expected to remain silent, honor the feelings of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and make space for and amplify BIPOC educators. In presentations resembling Soviet-era struggle sessions, Flores instructs teachers that they must, quote, "deepen their political analysis of racism and oppression and start healing with public apologies about their racism and then go back and apologize through an audit, through an anti-racist lens," unquote. During one of these sessions, Flores hosted an exercise resembling Orwell's 2-minute hate, in which minority teachers were allowed 90 seconds to berate their white colleagues. During the exercise, Flores denounced one of her white female colleagues by screaming, "You make me feel unsafe, you make me feel unsafe," repeatedly for 90 seconds. Afterward, Flores boasted on Facebook that she had publicly humiliated a racist, despite providing no evidence of racism or misconduct. It was a pure display of racial dominance. 90 seconds screaming at a white teacher, "You make me feel unsafe. You make me feel unsafe." Didn't Sinatra have a song like that? Yeah, So Young. But that was a better time when people sang, "You make me feel so young," and now they sing, "You make me feel unsafe." That's right. You don't think the Soviet Union could happen here? I don't see the future here as Nazi Germany. I do see it as Soviet Union. We'll be back.
This is Albert Mogler for Townhall.com. The Supreme Court announced last week that it would hear an abortion case coming from the state of Mississippi. The case is Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. The infamous abortion clinic in Jackson, Mississippi, is challenging legislation that makes abortion illegal after the 15th week of a woman's term. If the law is upheld, lives would be saved. Lots of them. This is big news, but it's not necessarily the case that the court will reverse Roe v. Wade. I often refer to the cumulative case theory of the pro-life movement. That comes down to this: pro-life legislation and pro-life lawyers working to erode Roe v. Wade step by step, law by law, restriction by restriction, court precedent by court precedent. Make no mistake, this case is huge, and the precedent will be massive. The second issue is even more important. The Mississippi law, and thus this particular Supreme Court case, focuses on the life of the unborn child. That's the biggest issue here. We should watch and hope and pray for change from the courts. We also need to hope and work and pray for a change in human hearts.
Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Rovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not one mistake.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
But why do so many people really hate the Jewish people?
Well, it's a hatred with a long history. Actually, if you read the Bible or the Talmud, there is almost a sense of resignation that this kind of hatred is
permanent.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And it has to do with the fact that Jewish people live by a different set of laws. And we're not perfect. We're as human as anybody else. But we do have a set of aspirations that is quite stringent. And that means that we are sometimes seen as a people who set themselves apart from others, whether linguistically, culturally, or religiously.
I heard this.
You know.
I heard this I heard exactly that same answer on another show from a caller this morning. It's funny you used that justification, but Joel, Asians, Chinese, Japanese, they set themselves apart. They have their own cultural standards, their own traditions and laws. They don't face the kind of eons worth of hatred the Jewish people do. Is there some other explanation? Because it seems so utterly irrational. We are
the other explanation is envy, because Jews have been successful throughout the years, and again, there are poor Jews, there are Jews who have failed in various ways, there are Jews who are criminals who end up in jail.
I am reading to you one of the scariest pieces I've read in my 35-year career. It's up at DennisPrager.com. It's from City Journal. It is about what is happening in the Portland area school districts. These hate sessions in the name of anti-racism, the brainwashing of children from kindergarten. I sit stupefied that any parent who loves truth, forget loves the country, would send their child to one of these schools. You realize that people don't react to evil until it's too late. This is the lesson, truly the lesson. And the people who do warn about evil are dismissed certainly by the evildoers, but by a lot of naive people who don't want to listen. I'm one of them who are arguing this. The left is evil, liberals are naive. That's the way it is. Does that mean that every leftist is personally evil? No, every leftist is personally advocating evil. People are mixed bags. I don't really give a hoot about morally assessing individual leftists. I care about morally assessing the left. The left is a force of evil and pure destruction. It has always been. There isn't 1 minute of exception in history. From Lenin to the people who gave Stalin the nuclear secrets, to these teachers, the left is evil. It only destroys. That people do not want to recognize it is part of human nature. People do not want to fight. That is it. People are morally lazy. At Lincoln High School, a wealthy public school with only 1% black student enrollment, some students take 2 full years of critical race studies. I wonder if they know how to define the word sentence. What is a sentence? After all, if they're studying for 2 years critical race studies, they're not studying something else. Forget music and art. That the public schools abolished for most kids a long time ago. It's a cult. The course is taught by Jessica Malaire Best. Oh, I want to underline this because I have another point to make later. That'll blow your mind. Your collective mind, but your individual minds. Begin with training on racial identity, white supremacy, institutional racism, and racial empowerment. You realize all of this is a gigantic lie. The whole thing is puff. With the goal of providing, quote, methods in which students can begin to be activists and allies for change. The following year, students take 2 semesters of critical race theory, studying white fragility, intersectionality, whiteness as property, the permanence of racism, collective organizing, and being an activist, with an eye toward training them to, quote, do their part in dismantling white supremacy. What they mean is dismantling America and the American value system. The next step is obvious. Children endowed with conviction in their own moral purity head to the front lines. In 2018, Ockley Green Middle School invited, quote, police abolitionist Teresa Rayford, hold on, to hold an assembly on social justice, after which she led hundreds of students into the street to perform a die-in in the middle of an intersection without seeking permission from or notifying parents. Get that? Parental authority, screw it. And parents are okay with this. They keep their kids in this school. During the Floyd protests, the teacher and student-led protests accelerated. Children as young as 5 held a mock protest at Sabin Elementary School and raised the Black Power fist alongside their teachers. This reminds me of the Hitler Youth and Komsomol, Soviet Youth League. You want your child with a raised fist? The freest country in the world? Including for BIPOC, blacks, indigenous people, and people of color? 1-8-PRAGER 776. I'd like to remind you of a major new product on this program, Nerve Renew. I had much of my adult life, I've had tingling and numbness in my feet. Many people have it in their hands. Many people have it in their feet. And I finally had a pretty good solution in special inserts for my shoes. Of course, when I took the shoes off, I had hell to pay. But anyway, well, not hell. Be that as it may, I read about Nerve Renew on the internet, figured why not try it. And to my shock, within a year, I threw away the inserts. I'm not wearing them now. Try Nerve Renew for 2 weeks for free and a 1-year money-back guarantee. NerveRenew.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America. You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. We know exactly what's going on here. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is Albert Mogler for townhall.com. The Supreme Court announced last week that it would hear an abortion case coming from the state of Mississippi. The case is Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, the infamous abortion clinic in Jackson, Mississippi, is challenging legislation that makes abortion illegal after the 15th week of a woman's term. If the law is upheld, lives would be saved. Lots of them. This is big news, but it's not necessarily the case that the court will reverse Roe v. Wade. I often refer to the cumulative case theory of the pro-life movement. That comes down to this: pro-life legislation and pro-life lawyers working to erode Roe v. Wade step by step, law by law, restriction by restriction, court precedent by court precedent. Make no mistake, this case is huge, and the precedent will be massive. The second issue is even more important. The Mississippi law, and thus this particular Supreme Court case, focuses on the life of the unborn child. That's the biggest issue here. We should watch and hope and pray for change from the courts. We also need to hope and work and pray for a change in human hearts.
Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Rovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I'm reading to you one of the most important articles. If everybody knew about this, they would understand the existential threat to the United States. That's the one existential threat that the left poses to freedom / liberty, individualism, the rule of law, objective truth. I feel almost foolish having to say this to you, but since the left owns the vast majority of the media, there have to be voices calling them out. What I'm reading to you from the City Journal on what is happening at public schools in the Portland area. During the Floyd protests, this was the last sentence I read, teacher and student-led protests accelerated. Children as young as 5 held a mock protest and raised the Black Power fist alongside their teachers. Middle school students in Northeast Portland held a public march advocating the defunding of police. High school students marched through a neighborhood in Southwest Portland, quote, the whitest part of the city, unquote, demanding that residents provide reparations to blacks. Well, it's obviously working. The Hitler Youth, Komsomol, that's Communist Youth League, type work on the youth of Portland and elsewhere. Violence has followed. The Youth Liberation Front, one of the most active and violent protest groups in Portland, was founded by teenagers and has recruited hundreds of young people to fight against the American regime. The group is organized into autonomous cells to avoid law enforcement infiltration and has armed itself with shields, weapons, gas masks, and explosives. Nothing excites a young boy in particular, but now girls as well, as fighting for some greater cause. There were no sadists quite like youthful sadists under the Hitler Youth and the Komsomol. The most decorated young person in Soviet history was a young boy who snitched on his father for actually trying to get food for the family in the Stalin-induced famine that killed 5 to 6 million Ukrainians. His father was then executed for stealing food for the family. The boy was honored with a postage stamp in the USSR. Well, you know, the only horror films that scare me are when children are monsters. I find that's the only thing that I find frightening. Otherwise, I don't find them very realistic and they don't have an effect on me. So what the left is doing to children is literally horrifying. The group organized a walkout of Portland high schools and then rioted for more than 100 consecutive nights. This is the Youth Liberation Front. Following George Floyd's death. By the way, for the record, George Floyd's death had nothing to do with his being black. That was the statement of the black left-wing Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison. Okay, so the entire rioting based on the George Floyd death was based on nothing racist. We are a bunch of teenagers armed with ADHD and yerba mate. What's yerba mate?
Yerba mate.
Yerba mate? What is that?
It's a drink.
It's a drink?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a tea.
The group declared on social media, we can take a 5 a.m. raid and be back on our feet a few hours later. We'll be back again and again until every prison is reduced to ashes. So they want to get rid of prisons. This is what the left has taught young people in Oregon. And then innocent people will be raped, innocent women will be raped, innocent people will be murdered, robbed, beaten by the people let out of prisons in many cases. Not in all, but in many. And they won't care. That is the definition of a cult. All moral and rational reasoning has been dispensed with. Over the course of the summer, Portland and Multnomah County law enforcement arrested dozens of minors, including members of the Youth Liberation Front, for protest-related crimes, including rioting, burglary, property destruction, throwing rocks and bottles at police officers, brandishing a handgun at a crowd, setting fire to the police union headquarters, and stomping a man unconscious. Final paragraph. Their teachers, too, have immersed themselves in the destruction. Over the course of the summer unrest, police arrested at least 5 school teachers for riot-related crimes. Rose Addis, an award-winning Portland Public Schools elementary school teacher, was arrested for felony riot, disorderly conduct, and attempting to steal an officer's baton. April Epperson, a Portland Public Schools elementary school teacher, was arrested for disorderly conduct and interfering with a police officer. Jacob Soto, a Portland Public Schools middle school band teacher, was arrested for felony riot and interfering with a police officer. Cody Porter, an avowed communist and Multnomah County school instructor, was arrested for assaulting a federal officer. And Hannah Fuster, a preschool teacher, was arrested for disorderly conduct and interfering with a police officer. My conclusions when we come back. Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Rovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not one mistake.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Let me say this. Curtis Sliwa is a hero. The more you get to know him, he's an astonishing figure. And we see more and more of them. Mike Lindell is like this. Trump is like this. They come across as goofy, normal people, but they are brilliant. Curtis Sliwa knows more about how New York works and what to do and what not to do. He's a genius on that level, and he's been in this world for over 40 years. So I want to say, I hope people will give to his campaign. New York is a bellwether. If New York were to shift, and it would shift dramatically under Curtis Sliwa, nobody else comes close to Curtis. I just want to say that. There are other candidates that anybody would be better than de Blasio. De Blasio is the nightmare you never thought could happen. He is not only a maniacal ideologue and a socialist and a nut, but he is also incompetent. Right. So the issue is that anybody would be better. But Curtis Sliwa, I really mean this. I believe that he would be in the pantheon of the truly great mayors, a man who gives his life to the job. It's the opposite of the Peter Principle, where people just keep rising and rising to their level of incompetence. Right. This is a guy, I think he was born to be the mayor of New York City. This is exactly what the calling is on his life. He's just an extraordinary figure. So, folks, Curtis Sliwa for mayor. If you can vote, vote. Tell your friends. He's somebody that I've had the privilege of getting to know.
All right, y'all. Last sentence of this incredibly important piece on the Sovietization of Portland students and schools and life. Talked about all the teachers arrested for assault, etc., and the demonstrations and protests and riots. All except one were released immediately without bail. And according to publicly available directories, at least 2 of the Portland public school teachers appear to still be employed by the district. One more point I'd like to make. Every single person in this article, except one, is a female. For those of you who believe the idiocy, the sheer, uncompromised idiocy that a world run by women would be better than the one that has been run by men, this and so many articles like this. Women are disproportionately involved in the ruination of education. Just a fact. Is that an attack on women? No more than it is an attack on men that men are disproportionately involved in violent crime. Each sex ruins society in its own way. The names in this article: the superintendent, Sue Rika Smith; the board chair, Maureen Wolf; the social justice activist, Zinnia Un; the racial identity teacher, Jessica Malaire Best; the police abolitionist, Teresa Rayford; award-winning public school elementary school teacher arrested for felony riot disorderly conduct, Rose Addis; Portland Public Schools elementary school teacher arrested for disorderly conduct interfering with a police officer, April Epperson; avowed communist, school instructor assaulting a police officer, Cody Porter; and Hannah Fuster, preschool teacher arrested for interfering with a police officer. Everyone in the entire piece was a female except for one male teacher. Yep. So much for that drivel. That's the way it is. I have identified, thanks to Christopher Rufo, I have merely brought it to your attention, not a case of political difference, a case of evil, the undoing of all that is good in America by the left in that part of the country, but in yours as well.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
So I want to get through a very important piece of news that happened. The Pelosi Commission. So for the last couple months, Nancy Pelosi, I think, has been intentionally slow-walking this. I think that Nancy Pelosi has been intentionally dragging her feet for months because Nancy Pelosi wanted a commission to look into January 6th, despite the fact that every single department of law enforcement right now is looking into it. She wanted this to be a later authorized commission so it would go into the election year of 2022 and hurt Republicans. So she did not want this to be an overnight thing. So she pretended as if she was negotiating with Republicans on this commission. And the more information that we get about January 6th, the more it looks like an interruption, not an insurrection. And I'm not supporting the smashing of windows or the assaulting of police officers. You lay your hand on a police officer, you should go to prison for a very long time. I'm not minimizing that. At the same time, who killed Ashley Babbitt? And why were there no charges against the person that fired a shot at Ashley Babbitt, who was unarmed? I thought that was the big mantra of BLM Incorporated. So for months now, Republicans have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi. When I say Republicans, I mean someone who is not even a Republican, someone who voted for impeachment. And so the commission is supposed to be like a 9/11 style commission to look in to the January 6th incident. But we all know how these things happen. This would be a Mueller style counsel that would be a roaming prosecutor.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
But why do so many people really hate the Jewish people?
Well, it's a hatred with a long history. Actually, if you read the Bible or the Talmud, there is almost a sense of resignation that this kind of hatred is
permanent.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And it has to do with the fact that Jewish people live by a different set of laws. And we're not perfect. We're as human as anybody else. But we do have a set of aspirations that is quite stringent. And that means that we are sometimes seen as a people who set themselves apart from others, whether linguistically, culturally, or religiously.
I heard.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
People say, what can I do? What can I do? Well, what you can do, one thing you can do is share the information we present on this program. So if you get an email, you can simply forward the email to people you think that would appreciate it, or tell them to sign up for the newsletter and they can get it themselves. But these videos, some of them are really important. We just did one actually with, my gosh, we had a whole bunch. We had an amazing interview with Oz Guinness. We had an amazing interview with him about his new book. It is fundamental. It's so good, we're going to have to rerun it a few times because it was just an amazing conversation about the biblical roots of American liberty, the undeniably biblical roots of the kind of government that we have had here since before the beginning, frankly, but that's another story. Since before 1776. We also did an interview. I want people to get to know Tim Eaton. He is the founder, CEO of Nutrimedics, okay? I want you to know who this guy is because, as I say over and over again, we have tremendous economic power in America and we've not leveraged it. And what I mean by that is that Americans who share our values spend hundreds of billions of dollars every year. So the question is, how do we spend it? Where do we spend it? Are you giving that money to companies like Coca-Cola or Nike or now Adidas or Skechers that do not share your values, that are willing to look the other way when we're dealing with horrific human rights abuses?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Restaurants in Florida have been relatively unscathed for the most part. In New York, it's been a vast wasteland. It's been a disaster. Bubbles in the sidewalk, streets being closed, people out in the winter freezing their butts off trying to eat. What has motivated the political leaders, the mayors, the governor? What do you think is driving this insanity?
I thought it was fear, right? We all behave differently when we're in a fear situation we're unfamiliar with. And I thought New York was just shocked. Right, I thought the leadership was just shocked.
Right.
And cold weather, not being as much outdoors, etc. I got to tell you, I really don't know how to answer that question. I really don't. I cannot understand.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. We have a ceasefire in Israel between it and the terrorist organization Hamas, which kicked in at 2 a.m. Israeli time last night. It will mark the end of 11 days of fighting. It was very tense right up to the moment of the ceasefire entering into effect, but it is held for the first few hours. More than 230 Palestinians, about 170 of whom are terrorists. So 50 civilians, 12 Israeli innocents as well, dead in the fighting. Each a tragedy by the scale of previous Israeli-Hamas wars. It is a smaller death toll, but Hamas has been ravaged. Hamas took it on the chin. The new Israeli technology, the new Israeli intelligence, the new Israeli missiles have just blasted Hamas into the ground. In the middle of this, a story arrives from Ynet that Iran sent an armed drone into Israel from Iraq or Syria, which is a cause of great concern looking down the road. Secretary of State Blinken is going to visit Israel in the coming days. Egypt gets the lion's share of the credit for
All right, my friends, from the totalitarianism, the incipient totalitarianism developing in Portland, to COVID. A major physician, a full-time practicing board-certified radiologist at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City, regular medical contributor to Fox News, Nicole Safier, has written Panic Attack, Playing Politics with Science in the Fight Against COVID-19, an argument that has been made at this microphone from the very beginning of the lockdown. Dr. Safier, welcome to the Dennis Prager Show.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
When did your book come out?
It officially comes out tomorrow. Very exciting time because I've been working on this for a very long time.
How are your colleagues reacting to you?
Well, that's a great question. And of course, everything that I write and I say is reflective of my own opinions and not that of my colleagues or any institution I work for. But I can tell you, here's the thing when it comes to academics and science and research, it's hard for a lot of people to go against the old guard establishment. It's kind of been ingrained in us. And so anybody that does is viewed as contrarian. But it doesn't mean that they speak the truth any less. They're just challenging that old guard.
I'd like to confide in you something and have you react, and I always tell guests they can disagree with me fully, and it is not an issue. But I want you to know, and my listeners do know this, that I have developed, not only have I lost respect, but I have developed contempt for the medical esteblishment of the United States of America in the last year and a half, something brand new in my life. I never had this before. My brother is an esteemed physician. I won't say his name, but I know you would know him. He's in New York as well. And it is painful for me to tell you that, but I don't believe anything the AMA or the New England Journal of Medicine or Lancet or any of the others say any longer.
Well, I think there's a healthy dose of skepticism is what keeps people on their toes and really makes people strive for success. But I can tell you, of course, these are exactly the issues that I divulge into my book because of what has occurred. The American Medical Association has turned into a Goliath, and it doesn't necessarily represent the feelings or beliefs of the majority of physicians in the country. That's actually something I touched on in my first book, Make America Healthy Again. But, you referenced the New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet, and, what has happened over the course of this pandemic is that the media and big tech has taken normal scientific discord and turned it into something that it didn't have to be. From face masks to hydroxychloroquine to many other facets of the pandemic, when people were trying to challenge opinions, challenge hypotheses, to figure out what really will and will not work, unfortunately, the knee-jerk anti-Trumpism divided the country, and anyone who went against what popular opinion was deemed a charlatan who was, peddling snake oil.
That's right. So, were you surprised? In other words, is there any, in you a doctor, was there any parallel to this massive drop in respect for the medical establishment that I've experienced?
I've never seen anything quite like this before, and that's the reason, to be honest, why I did decide to do research on my own, was the rampant misinformation and politicization of everything that was coming out, which caused a massive amount of hysteria across the country, and it really hindered our response because of that. When I was writing about hydroxychloroquine, for example, that was supposed to be a small subchapter in my book. It ended up becoming an entire chapter of itself. Not because this old, cheap medication is really that interesting in of itself, but what happened regarding it was truly appalling. And unfortunately, because of the actions of even many esteemed academics and hospital systems and journals, yes, I think it would create anyone to actually begin questioning them, as it should.
For the record, again, I know my listeners know this, you would not. I have been taking hydroxychloroquine and zinc and ivermectin for the last year, and vitamin D. I've done the exact opposite of what the medical establishment has advised. The thought that doctors and organizations would react to a medicine that could help people negatively because they politically dislike the president who mentioned it is appalling.
No, I completely agree. It made sense that hydroxychloroquine early on was being studied as potential treatment because this is a widely used medication with known antiviral effects, and it had already been studied against the original SARS coronavirus. So when this novel coronavirus emerged, we had no proven treatments, no real way to prevent the virus. Yes, we threw the sink at it. Yes, anything that we think could work, it's time to look into that. And, while I don't, especially now, the state of emergency, in my opinion, is over. Cases and deaths have reached an all-time low. You have over 60% of American adults have been vaccinated. Add that to your natural immunity levels. Well, we're quite close to herd immunity if we're not there yet. The state of emergency is coming to an end. So I certainly wouldn't recommend anyone taking any hard-hitting medications to prevent this virus at this point, as community transmission is very low. But what did occur, and the fact that people were censored by big tech when they were looking into something, is really quite criminal.
That's why my first question to you was, how did your colleagues react? So I'll put you on the spot here. I have had epidemiologists and other physicians, physicians, epidemiologists and not physicians necessarily. I have had both on, some of whom have said that if we had taken therapeutics like the ones I mentioned, we could have saved about half the lives of those who died from COVID. Do you agree with that?
That's a stretch to say that that's how many lives would be saved. The truth is, we were delayed in terms of putting forth treatment plans. We got a lot wrong in the beginning. People were being put on ventilators when they should not have been. People were not giving certain treatments. They were very restrictive with the monoclonal antibodies. Data on hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, still, I can find you just as many studies showing they work versus they don't work. But that's what happens in a time of crisis, because you're not trying to come up with a great clinical trial. You're trying to save lives. And so if there was only more support in the medical community, then as people were trying to treat people, we would have gotten more information, whether they work, whether they don't work. But could lives have been saved if we formulated better treatment plans in the beginning? Absolutely. How many? I'm not sure, and I don't think anybody can actually say.
Right, okay. But we would have saved lives if we'd have gone that route. Give me 2 examples or more, if you like, of panic.
Well, so not only am I a physician, but, I'm a mother of 3. And what's happening right now in terms of children, it's really upsetting in the sense that you have adults, anyone who wants to be vaccinated is vaccinated at this point. You have teachers who have had access to the vaccine as long as they wanted. And now you still have children being told that they have to continue wearing masks. They have to continue wearing masks indoors and outdoors. And some states are even saying if for children to go back to school in the fall, it'll be contingent upon vaccines that's under an emergency use authorization. They're going to have to wear masks. But here's the thing. When it comes to young children, COVID is not an emergency. Transmission is down. And we have already seen that this virus does not affect children as severely as other populations. And now we even have more data showing what we already knew. Those hospitalization rates for children are likely even less because they were accounting for asymptomatic incidental cases. So we have got to get away from this perceived level of risk with this virus and move towards reality. The truth is people are now paralyzed in fear going forward. They're more fearful of COVID than cancer. They've stopped getting their cancer screenings. And we have people not allowing children to be in school and to play, hindering some of their development because they're so fearful of this virus. And until we move away from a perceived risk to reality, we're going to continue doing harm.
An important book, A Courageous Physician, Panic Attack. Playing Politics with Science in the Fight Against COVID-19. The book is up at DennisPrager.com. The doctor is Nicole Saphir.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
People say, what can I do? What can I do? Well, what you can do, one thing you can do is share the information we present on this program. So if you get an email, you can simply forward the email to people you think that would appreciate it, or tell them to sign up for the newsletter and they can get it themselves. But these videos, some of them are really important. We just did one actually with, my gosh, we had a whole bunch. We had an amazing interview with Oz Guinness. We had an amazing interview with him about his new book. It is fundamental. It's so good. We're going to have to rerun it a few times because it was just an amazing conversation about the biblical roots of American liberty, the undeniably biblical roots of the kind of government that we have had here since before the beginning, frankly, but that's another story. Since before 1776. We also did an interview. I want people to get to know Tim Eaton. He is the founder, CEO of Nutrimedics, okay? I want you to know who this guy is because, as I say over and over again, we have tremendous economic power in America and we've not leveraged it. And what I mean by that is that Americans who share our values spend hundreds of billions of dollars every year. So the question is, how do we spend it? Where do we spend it? Are you giving that money to companies like Coca-Cola or Nike or now Adidas or Skechers that do not share your values, that are willing to look the other way when we're dealing with horrific human rights abuses?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Restaurants in Florida have been relatively unscathed for the most part. In New York, it's been a vast wasteland. It's been a disaster. Bubbles in the sidewalk, streets being closed, people out in the winter freezing their butts off trying to eat. What has motivated the political leaders, the mayors, the governor? What do you think is driving this insanity?
I thought it was fear, right? We all behave differently when we're in a fear situation we're unfamiliar with. And I thought New York was just shocked. Right, I thought the leadership was just shocked.
Right.
And cold weather, not being as much outdoors, etc. I got to tell you, I really don't know how to answer that question. I really don't. I cannot understand.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. We have a ceasefire in Israel between it and the terrorist organization Hamas, which kicked in at 2 a.m. Israeli time last night. It will mark the end of 11 days of fighting. It was very tense right up to the moment of the ceasefire entering into effect, but it is held for the first few hours. More than 230 Palestinians, about 170 of whom are terrorists. So 50 civilians, 12 Israeli innocents as well, dead in the fighting. Each a tragedy by the scale of previous Israeli-Hamas wars. It is a smaller death toll, but Hamas has been ravaged. Hamas took it on the chin. The new Israeli technology, the new Israeli intelligence, the new Israeli missiles have just blasted
Hi, everybody. One of the greatest groups in the United States is the Job Creators Network. And all they're asking you to do, if you are worried about small businesses in particular, they're looking for a few good men and women to join their small business advocacy and advisor program. They'll train you up, help you with op-eds in your local papers, TV appearances on your local news stations. In short, their team will prepare you to be a leader and fighter for small businesses in your community, state, and the country you love. If you own a business or simply want to join the fight, go to joinjcn.com. Join JCM, Job Creators Network.com, and learn more. They're looking for a few good men and women. You want to fight? This is a perfect opportunity to do so. Small business is the backbone of this country. Look at what big business is doing to this country. JoinJCN.com. My guest is a distinguished physician at the Sloan Kettering Medical Center, Cancer Center in New York City. And she has written a book with a great title, exactly what has happened, Panic Attack, Playing Politics with Science in the Fight Against COVID-19. She is an MD, obviously, and regular medical contributor for Fox News. So now that you've written about it and obviously thought about it and diagnosed it, how do you explain the panic attack over COVID?
You know, it's been astounding to me that you know, regardless of how low the case levels get, how few the hospitalizations are, and how few people are dying every day from this virus, people are still wanting to stay in a perpetual state of lockdown. And I don't know what their end point is. Like I've repeatedly said, the emergency at this point is over, and it is time to be moving forward. But we're not hearing that being declared. And I thought perhaps that, you know, it was all anti-Trump, and that was one of the biggest failures of the pandemic, was that people could not actually come together and work together. I think one of the biggest things that we saw was even when President Biden was crediting the vaccination efforts, the one thing that he did not do was credit President Trump. For someone who said that he wants to create unity in a country, how can anyone not credit the sole action of providing funding to allow parallel manufacturing of these vaccines as they are undergoing investigation? That single move is what has created the space that we're in right now, and that is getting us through this pandemic. And it's just, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know. I know that, you know, we were in the midst of trade war conversations with China at the time, and so maybe people didn't want to ruffle their feathers with China. But I think that people are going to now, at this point, have to take a real hard look and realize that you can't blindly trust some of these foreign adversaries at this point, and we need to be able to protect our country much better in the future.
Did you wear a mask outdoors the entire time?
I have always been of the mindset that, you know, common sense being common sense, that viral transmission outdoors is unlikely to occur. And one of the first things that I did with my family in early March was to make sure that we were outside as much as possible, getting vitamin D, because that is essential to your physical and mental health. And I chose not to wear masks. If I had to wear a mask, if I was being told to wear a mask while I was outdoors, I was choosing not to go to those places. I do recall being ridiculed as I was walking alone on a path one day by a woman who was walking the opposite direction from me because she was wearing her mask. And that's the interesting part. She can ridicule me because she doesn't agree with me. But I have no problem with the fact that she wants to wear a mask. I don't think it's necessary, but I also didn't feel that I needed to criticize her. And that was something that, you know, became very obvious throughout this entire pandemic, was that if you disagreed with someone, you canceled them. You told them they were wrong. They were anti-science. They were killing people. There was all this verbiage That is what created more of that panic and fear and incited anger.
I can only say that that woman is lucky I was not with you at that time. Among other things, I would have noted, the woman you just ridiculed is a medical doctor. What are you? And then if she would have said nothing, I would have filled in the blank. Moron. This is what we have been living with. And I just want to remind my listeners that I, not a doctor, but a possessor of common sense and some knowledge, knew how silly wearing masks outdoors was. And I told the city of Glendale, California, from where I broadcast and where I am now, that I will be outdoors at the following hours. Please arrest me. But unfortunately, it did not occur. But it was pure common sense. It has been another disappointment of mine that so many of my fellow Americans panic so easily. It's part of the reason your book is so important. I remind my listeners, the book is Panic Attack. Nicole Safier is an MD. She is at the Sloan Kettering Medical Center in New York City. What do you think about giving kids the vaccine?
So the vaccine has created a very important space in the sense that had we not been given a vaccine and we were to get to herd immunity naturally, we would have had much more death. I do believe that the states that focused on vaccinating the highest risk played it right. I think, as we saw, those over the age of 65 had about a 77 times higher rate of hospitalization than that of children. When it comes to the vaccine in young kids, for me, as I had mentioned, I don't believe that this virus is an emergency for them and should not necessarily be considered under the emergency use authorization. I do believe that having a safe and efficacious vaccine for all ages is important, but I don't think that it needs to be done with the same urgency and have the same universal campaign as that with the older adults. I understand there is a reason to vaccinate the younger population, because yes, by vaccinating the vulnerable, you're saving the most amount of lives, and by decreasing viral transmission in the younger population, you're reducing that risk of more variants forming. However, again, I think that we have gotten ourselves to a very good place in this country, and I think that any parent who wants to consider vaccinating their children, it should be under a full FDA approval, and it should not be done with such urgency because the emergency is over.
Bless you. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your book, Dr. Nicole Safier, Panic Attack. The book is up at DennisPrager.com. Thank you again, Doctor.
Thanks so much for having me.
This is Albert Mogler for Townhall.com. The Supreme Court announced last week that it would hear an abortion case coming from the state of Mississippi. The case is Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. The infamous abortion clinic in Jackson, Mississippi, is challenging legislation that makes abortion illegal after the 15th week of a woman's term. If the law is upheld, lives would be saved. Lots of them. This is big news, but it's not necessarily the case that the court will reverse Roe v. Wade. I often refer to the cumulative case theory of the pro-life movement. That comes down to this: pro-life legislation and pro-life lawyers working to erode Roe v. Wade step by step, law by law, restriction by restriction, court precedent by court precedent. Make no mistake, this case is huge, and the precedent will be massive. The second issue is even more important. The Mississippi law, and thus this particular Supreme Court case, focuses on the life of the unborn child. That's the biggest issue here. We should watch and hope and pray for change from the courts. We also need to hope and work and pray for a change in human hearts.
Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins in bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Grovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal, Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694. 800-221-7694. AmericanFederal.com. AmericanFederal.com. Not one mistake.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Let me say this. Curtis Lewa is a hero. The more you get to know him, he's an astonishing figure. And we see more and more of them. Mike Lindell is like this. Trump is like this. They come across as goofy, normal people, but they are brilliant. Curtis Lewa knows more about how New York works and what to do and what not to do. He's a genius on that level, and he's been in this world for over 40 years. So I want to say, I hope people will give to his campaign. New York is a bellwether. If New York were to shift, and it would shift dramatically under Curtis Lewa, nobody else comes close to Curtis. I just want to say that. There are other candidates that anybody would be better than de Blasio. De Blasio is the nightmare you never thought could happen. He is not only a maniacal ideologue and a socialist and a nut, but he is also incompetent. Right. So the issue is that anybody would be better. But Curtis Lewa, I really mean this. I believe that he would be in the pantheon of the truly great mayors, a man who gives his life to the job. It's the opposite of the Peter Principle, where people just keep rising and rising to their level of incompetence. Right. This is a guy, I think he was born to be the mayor of New York City. This is exactly what the calling is on his life. He's just an extraordinary figure. So, folks, Curtis Lewa for mayor. If you can vote, vote. Tell your friends. He's somebody that I've had the privilege of getting to know.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
But why do so many people really hate the Jewish people?
Well, it's a hatred with a long history. Actually, if you read the Bible or the Talmud, there is almost a sense of resignation.
Medical institution, Sloan Kettering in New York City. And you have to understand, just being in New York City induced greater panic. My friends in New York stayed home much more than people I know of anywhere else in the country. They locked themselves in. They didn't let their kids play with other kids. New York City was probably the most panic-struck big city in the country. And I'm in a sick city called Los Angeles. Almost every city is sick because urban areas produce fools, and they produce Democratic mayors. A very bad combination for the sake of the city. But New York was the worst. New Yorkers are the most frightened, were the most frightened. So for her to have these views in the middle of New York City, in Manhattan, is quite courageous as a doctor. She didn't wear a mask outdoors. I didn't know what her answer would be, by the way. I truly didn't. I didn't know what her answer would be to a lot of my questions. Should we vaccinate the young? I didn't know what she would say. And I'm saying this to vindicate Dennis. So I'm not a doctor, but I do have a pursuit of truth and common sense and a pretty good brain. It's a good combination. I have no ulterior motive other than what is good, right, and true. Very quaint values. Masks were a farce outdoors. a farce. They were probably a farce indoors, unless it's a surgical mask and absolutely no porosity. The whole thing was a talisman. You know what a talisman is? A talisman is like a rabbit's foot. Oh, there was a great line. Joseph Telushkin told it to me. Niels Bohr, the great Danish physicist. So I'm going to blow it because I can never remember lines, but something to the effect. He had a rabbit's foot hanging in his office, and oh God, somebody said, "I'll get the line for you." I don't want to bungle it, but it's a very funny line about one of the greatest physicists in history having a rabbit's foot up. And that's what it was. It's a rabbit's foot, the mask. God, that story. A woman ridiculed Dr. Safir for not wearing a mask outdoors in New York. How could she not say, I'm sorry, but I'm a doctor. I think I know more than you do. I don't believe in superstition. Masks are a superstition. Okay? I mean, if you have... if you acknowledge the only reason you're wearing a mask outdoors is because it psychologically helps you, I have no problem. But if you really believe medically it's important, I don't know where you got that knowledge from. You probably read the New York Times, and that you're by definition misled. I mean that literally. By definition, misled. So when I announced that I wouldn't wear one ever and didn't ever outdoors, I am now vindicated. I'm vindicated on hydroxychloroquine. I'm vindicated on ivermectin, on vitamin D, on zinc, etc., etc. Because I have no axe to grind. I don't get pharmaceutical money. I don't have obedience to the CDC. I don't determine medical decisions based on whether Donald Trump advocated or opposed an item. Donald Trump got these vaccines done. I don't think young people should get these vaccines. And while she wasn't as direct as I am, that was the doctor's recommendation too. Kids shouldn't be getting these vaccines. They're still in the experimental stage. It breaks my heart when parents give their kids a vaccine, and this vaccine. You have no idea of its future ramifications. Absolutely none. Especially with girls and later pregnancies. Amazing. The people, the abundance of caution crowd, the better safe than sorry crowd, give their 15-year-old an experimental vaccine when there's no risk to their 15-year-old, statistically speaking, no COVID risk. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384. You all know about the 3-week quick start. Relief Factor claims that it'll work in 3 weeks, and if it doesn't work in 3 weeks, it probably won't work. So they give you a special price for 3 weeks, $19.95 in shipping. Doesn't work, cancel your order. It does work, get the order at the regular price. I think it's a pretty honest deal, isn't it? Read how it's helped people with pains in their joints and muscles. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Restaurants in Florida have been relatively unscathed for the most part In New York, it's been a vast wasteland. It's been a disaster. Bubbles in the sidewalks, streets being closed, people out in the winter freezing their butts off trying to eat. What has motivated the political leaders, the mayors, the governor? What do you think is driving this insanity?
You know, Mike, at first I thought it was fear, right? We all behave differently when we're in a fear situation we're unfamiliar with. And I thought New York was just shocked, right? I thought the leadership was just shocked.
Right.
And cold weather, not being as much outdoors, etc. I got to tell you, I really don't know how to answer that question. I really don't. I cannot understand. We served 45,000 customers this summer in New York. Not a single case of COVID got traced back to us. Not a single customer, not a single employee when they went back to college and had to get tested had COVID. That's 45,000 consumer touch points. Why wasn't there a conversation about that? Why just shut us down?
Right.
Why force me to come to Florida?
Right.
I really have a hard time meditating on that, Mike.
Yeah.
And I think history will judge this moment and be able to answer that question a lot easier than you and I can.
Well, either that or the writers of the history books are going to scratch their heads and say, what were they doing? What were they thinking? I mean, I remember sitting in an enclosed wooden structure out on a street in Manhattan 6 months or so ago, and it was completely enclosed, had heaters going. I'm thinking, wait a minute.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Curtis Lewa is a hero. The more you get to know him, he's an astonishing figure. And we see more and more of them. Mike Lindell is like this. Trump is like this. They come across as goofy, normal people, but they are brilliant. Curtis Lewa knows more about how New York works and what to do and what not to do. He's a genius on that level, and he's been in this world for over 40 years. So I want to say, I hope people will give to his campaign. New York is a bellwether. If New York were to shift, and it would shift dramatically under Curtis Lewa, nobody else comes close to Curtis. I just want to say that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager. It's been an intense show, I got to say that. You sent me an Economist articles from 2018. Are you aware of that? I don't mind, because I actually think it's relevant. but it was from 3 years ago. This is a tricky thing, by the way. A lot of you will send me articles, which is fine. A lot of you send very wonderful articles, thinking that they're from this past week and they're from 3 years ago. It even tripped up the almost untrippable producer of the show in one case. It doesn't matter to me. I just wanted you to know before I read it that it is from 3 years. It's relevant. So let me have it back. But you got tripped up, which is very rare. This is, by the way, it's actually good that it's from 3 years ago because it's gotten worse. The rise of the university's diversity bureaucrats. American universities are boosting spending on diversity officials. At the University of California, Berkeley, for example, the number of diversity bureaucrats has grown to 175. Even state funding of the university has been cut. This article is fascinating in the data it provides. Some are paid lavishly. The University of Michigan's diversity chief is reported to earn, I want you to guess, folks. Sean, I want you to tell me, how much does the diversity dean at the University of Michigan make a year? And don't give an outlandish number. Give what you realistically think. 100K, 200K, 150K. That would be a very good guess. That's a pretty tidy sum of money to be in charge of diversity. Are you ready for the real number? $385K. Huh?
It's over 400 now.
It would be over 400 now. That is. Oh, it is. You checked that? Yeah. $400,000 to the diversity chief at the University of Michigan. How many teachers make that amount of money at the University of Michigan? Not that they're worth it either, but they are worth more in general, unless they're, well, I don't know if that's true. Students at the University of Missouri must attend training to prevent even, this is The Economist, by the way. The Economist, contrary to the common belief, is not the conservative. To prevent even unconscious discrimination. A study of 669 American universities found that nearly a third required faculty to attend diversity training. I was at a business that required it. I don't remember if I attended or not. I wanted to. I think I attended but spoke up. Nobody speaks up. These are Mao sessions, Mao Zedong. Universities say that a boom in regulations under Barack Obama. Oh, Barack Obama. What did I say for years? The worst president since Andrew Johnson? Well, Joe Biden may have surpassed that. But he set the stage. Barack Obama's administration increased the need to hire more bureaucrats of every kind. One study found that for every dollar spent to comply with government rules, voluntary spending on bureaucracy totaled $2 at public universities and $3 at private ones. You get that? In other words, for every dollar the government said you had to spend on diversity, they spent $2 at public and $3 at private, 3 to 1. Robert Martin of Center College in Kentucky, a co-author of the study, says the real reason for the growth in spending is that administrators, this is very interesting. I did not think of this. This is where I know the guy has an honest study. The real reason for the growth in spending, that is at colleges for diversity deans, is that administrators want to hire subordinates, thereby boosting their own authority and often pay, rather than faculty over whom they have less power. Isn't that interesting? And yet the faculty are so left-wing, they go along with what undermines their own careers. Bureaucrats outnumber faculty 2 to 1 at public universities. I did not know that. There are 2 times as many administrators at public universities than teachers. Anyway, have you not learned from COVID that teachers, as a general rule, don't give a damn about students? Otherwise, there would have been school. Teachers refusing to teach their kids, though the risk to them was infinitesimally small. This is really something. Bureaucrats outnumber faculty 2 to 1 at public universities and 2.5 to 1 at private colleges. High spending on diversity officials also leads to fewer classes as well as higher tuition fees, which makes it harder for minorities who are disproportionately poor to attend college. Might students rebel? It seems unlikely. This is from The Economist. 1-8-PRAGER 776-877-243 776. Dennis Prager here, and let's see. Brad in Covington, Kentucky. Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
I think got a little mixed up. I'm listening to you on 1240 AM, and it seems like the show may be a little bit different than what I'm listening to here on my phone. I'm not sure if you want to take my comment if it's a little bit off topic here.
Is it about strong parents?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's fine. I was talking about that. That's why I took your call, so don't worry about it. We'll be back in a moment.
This is Albert Mogler for townhall.com. The Supreme Court announced last week that it would hear an abortion case coming from the state of Mississippi. The case is Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, the infamous abortion clinic in Jackson, Mississippi, is challenging legislation that makes abortion illegal after the 15th week of a woman's term. If the law is upheld, lives would be saved. Lots of them. This is big news, but it's not necessarily the case that the court will reverse Roe v. Wade. I often refer to the cumulative case theory of the pro-life movement. That comes down to this: pro-life legislation and pro-life lawyers working to erode Roe v. Wade step by step, law by law, restriction by restriction, court precedent by court precedent. Make no mistake, this case is huge, and the precedent will be massive. The second issue is even more important. The Mississippi law, and thus this particular Supreme Court case, focuses on the life of the unborn child. That's the biggest issue here. We should watch and hope and pray for change from the courts. We also need to hope and work and pray for a change in human hearts.
Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Rovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694. 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not one mistake.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Let me say this. Curtis Sliwa is a hero. The more you get to know him, he's an astonishing figure, and we see more and more of them. Mike Lindell is like this. Trump is like this. They come across as goofy, normal people, but they are brilliant. Curtis Sliwa knows more about how New York works and what to do and what not to do. He's a genius on that level, and he's been in this world for over 40 years. So I want to say, I hope people will give to his campaign. New York is a bellwether. If New York were to shift, and it would shift dramatically.
Hi. God, will you learn a lot in 5 minutes. It's mind-blowing what you will learn about the real Watergate affair. Dennis Prager here. I want to review some of the things I said, but first I wanted to get to this call in Kentucky with Brad. Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, so you were talking about how the left wanted to take away the freedom and individualism, kind of take away the power from parents and indoctrinating them in schools and such. And I guess I was just curious what your thought was and how that was different from Republican legislations taking away a parent's right to choose what medical treatment's best for their child with transgender children.
Well, we have laws that protect children against abuse. I don't think that you would regard that as taking away the rights of parents. To give
what would you consider? I apologize. Keep going.
Oh, you're very polite, and I salute you. To give children permanently changing hormones when they're in their teens, or most extreme, cut off healthy breasts of a young girl because she says she's a boy, and allow parents to say, yes, I would like my daughter's breasts cut off. I think that reasonable people can differ on that issue.
Well, I think most medical professionals would generally agree with you as well. I don't think many doctors are telling patients to have children under the age of 18 to have their breasts cut off. Most doctors only
where do we differ?
Hormone blockers.
So forgive me. So where do we differ?
Yeah. Well, so I guess I'm saying I don't see necessarily a problem with hormone blockers if that's what the decision of the parent and the doctor come to. It's not a decision to be made lightly. It's not like these parents are just going out hoping that they
All
can
right. I
find
have
some,
no interest in what the doctor has to say because it's not a medical issue. It's a psychological issue.
I guess so. I guess that's where yes, and you don't agree that a psychological issue or a mental health issue is medical.
That's correct. It is medical in the case of a psychiatrist. That's why they're allowed to prescribe drugs. But why a doctor who is a hormone doctor should have a moral or philosophical say any more than my plumber is a riddle to me.
Well, I wouldn't.
All right, I got to let you go. Forgive me. I really enjoy talking to you. I know I'd let you go abruptly, but I was just told we got to go. Folks, the last hour I spent, the second hour of the show, on what is happening at Portland schools, which is the first time I have truly believed we could be headed in places to a Sovietized America. I hope you will hear that. See you tomorrow.